So thank you very much. I'd like to first say that I'm a student following the 3 masters, and this is actually a talk on tuberculosis in children. It is very humbling to know that a lot of children in our country still suffer from tuberculosis, and there are, catastrophic consequences. Probably Dr. Mohan Desai and, everyone will be seeing a lot of this in municipal hospitals, and really till we see less of tuberculosis, it is finally a socio-economic problem, and it has to be addressed, at a macro level. We are actually playing a small part in this, and the indicator of development truly is actually the health of children. So, a lot of people still fall sick because of this, and this is a 2-year-old child who had extensive tuberculosis, and was treated with AKT. This was her, her coming back at 9 years. So essentially, this is in essence what you don't want to see. Extensive involvement and then a late deformity, and she came with an early myelopathy. You can see here that there is a cord signal change there. Okay, and now this is what has been described very well by Dr. Rajshekaran. He's described the 3 types of tuberculosis, post-tuberculokyphosis. All this work is based on the MRC trials. So there were MRC trials conducted in Hong Kong, Korea, and in Chennai. And a lot of the work which is done in tuberculosis, I would suggest you please try to look up that. There's a core issue which covers a lot of this work. And the progression of deformity in adults, if you see, it plateaus, and in children there are different types of deformity. There is worsening in 39%, improvement in 44%, and no change in 17%. Now, where the patient is going to fall, you don't know, so you have to follow them. Even after you complete the treatment, you need to keep them in follow-up. So, for example, this is a worsening deformity. And why are children susceptible? Because they have more vertebral bodies involved. There is destruction of the growth plates, and there is the Peter-Wokman principle, wherein the anterior compression and the posterior growth. And again, this was from the Chennai MRC trial. So Dr. Rajshekaran looked at the subset of patients with Dr. Shanmugarandan, and then he looked at making the algorithms. He described the spinal wrist signs which Dr. Dalby alluded. And basically, in children less than 5, almost 40% had a unfavorable sort of outcome. 50% still had a favorable outcome. So all patients don't need surgery. This was discussed earlier. It's like in Perthes, do all patients require a VDR or no? Only few patients require treatment. Now the level of involvement, the dorsal tuberculosis is most common. Dorsal lumbar lesions are worst. And lumbar lesions usually have the best prognosis because they have bigger end plates. The severity of involvement depends on how many bodies are involved at the beginning, and there's a formula for this. And these are the 3 types which you need to understand. The type A wide contact, the type B point contact, and the type C, which is basically a dislocation. And the red flags are basically children below 10, with more than 1.5 vertebral bodies involved, and the spinal wrist signs, more than 2. So this patient required, the one I showed you earlier, required a VCR. Now this is a high-risk surgery. You don't want to do it when you can help it. And basically, you have to have an MRI which is including the whole spine screening. There must not be a single MRI because often you will see multi-level involvement. You have to have culture proven, okay? And drug resistance is actually most common in Western India. In our part of India, it's the most common. And again, that's probably because of the way people are living in slums, very crowded, and I won't get into this again. But deformity common. Many patients will present with a neurological deficit, so important to ask them to do a tandem walk in the OPD. The children, if there is any ataxia, you'll pick it up. So, for example, this patient came to us, was a 5-year-old male treated with AKT empirically. Had a good outcome, okay? Had a good outcome, had already been started. Biopsy facilities are not available, and so treatment was given, patient did well. This is another 11-year-old child, had a CT guided biopsy. First line AKT was initiated after the biopsy, had a good outcome. So, that's the ideal situation. Then this is another patient with the dorsal tuberculosis, but, biopsy done, continued to have worsening, and then finally required surgery because of a deficit. So there are different presentations, you will have different presentations and all can't be treated the same way. This was a 14-year-old girl. She was actually nil neuro at presentation. Eventually then had a worsening, catastrophic progression and required treatment. Okay, and this was biopsy proven. So another 15-year-old girl, and again had progression and required surgery. This was a 5-year-old patient. He had come all the way from Bihar. Okay, he came from Bihar. He had this, very bad, grotesque deformity. And we thought we had done a very good job. We went in and we fixed everything, and we put fibula. And then we actually had a problem. Afterwards, the patient had a bone problem, post-op wound issues. The fibula graft slipped. And actually, it's very humbling to know that the surgery only has a limited role, because it's actually the AKT which is either going to work or not. And this was a drug-resistant tuberculosis. This child had, was in our ward actually for almost 6 months. So the post-surgical result is also a result of chemotherapy not being effective. So the important considerations are children are deformity progression, stability, neurology, and having drug sensitivity. I won't get into this again. This has been discussed. So at Vadia, so a lot of this work has been done at Vadia, and our protocol is basically to send the samples for MGIT cultures, gene expert histopath. All patients have a CT carotid biopsy. The infectious disease specialist, Dr. Ira Shah, actually looks after all our patients. So a lot of this work is, thanks to her. And basically we give conservative treatment to all patients as a rule. Operative patients are only if there is a neurological deficit. And basically the treatment is started as per ID after sending the samples. Empiric AKT started if we don't get a gene expert positive. Usually first line AKT is started. Second line AKT is reserved only for particular situations. So if it's first line is not if it's basically culture proven, or if we are sort of having to start it empirically based on clinical non-response to first line. So our protocol is basically conservative treatment for patients with normal neurology and with no cord compression, and only patients with a gross neurological deficit and significant cord compression will have surgery, at which time then we will send the biopsy. Now the response to treatment has been very well described by Dr. Zaveri, but basically a clinical response, X-rays showing improvement, okay, and the MRI showing resolution, and then the need for conversion to surgery if there is a worsening. So, this is actually a series of 105 patients. Now, it has actually been accepted at the SRS IMAS meeting this year. Dr. Tausif, who's one of our fellows, will be presenting it. And out of this, actually, we had a large series, so almost 90 patients who were treated conservatively, out of which 58% were non-drug resistant and 40% were drug resistant. So 41% of drug resistance tuberculosis is what we are seeing like right here. And we had 4 patients of XDR. Now in our series of 90 patients, we had gene expert or MGIT proven in 71, and basically we had no sort of answer in 19 patients, okay. So in that, the drug resistant patients were started on second line AKT straightforward based on the sensitivity. Non-drug resistant 35 were on first line, and then there were some indeterminate patients where empiric first line AKT was started, and in poor responders second line AKT was started. Poor responders are if we don't find a good clinical response or the MRI shows progression. So overall, this is the protocol which we are following. Now the site of involvement in our series mainly dorsal and dorsolumbar. And the average duration of AKT in first line was 1 year, and in second line it was drug resistant was 2 years. And basically we do use steroids in our patients who have deficit. Okay. So again, when we looked at the comparison of drug resistant versus non-drug resistant, the number of vertebral bodies involved were comparable, but the final kyphosis was significantly higher in the drug resistant group. You can see that, so it's almost 40 degrees in the drug resistant group. Again, if you look at the progression of conversion of surgery, this was more in the drug resistant group, okay. And the indications for surgery, so suppose we started conservative treatment and we decided on surgery, it was if there was neurological worsening. This is just to show you some of those cases. Now, the patterns of healing, we looked at the patterns of healing, and if you see, almost 50%, actually more than 50% had a good pattern of healing. You see that point where there was good contact. So basically 50% patients did not require anything for sure, okay? And even in the group, where there was worsening, it was more so in the patients who were drug resistant. You can see that. Now, the drug resistance patterns we looked at, and that shows that I'm not going to go into the depth of it, but this is just to show you that all the second line drugs which we used. And so the yield of the gene expert TB-MGIT was 78%. This is very important. So a good biopsy is very important. Okay, XDR is still there. It's there. We see it, and duration of steroids was higher in the drug-resistant group. Okay, so these patients are more prone to complications. Sir has already talked about the indications for surgery. There are very few strict indications. The rest are sort of more fluid. And as I said, this is a fair thing to use, okay? And this is the algorithm we follow. So basically, we looked at the cord compression, if there is vertebral body involvement, and the spinal instability, looking at all three things together. So if the cord compression is posterior, you just do a hemilaminectomy. If there is anterior compression, then you need to do anterior or transpedicular decompression. If the vertebral body involvement is less than 2, you can just get away with the posterior reconstruction. If it's more than 2, then you need to do anterior reconstruction, with the posterior approach. And the spinal instability, if it's present, then you just basically look at how many vertebrae are involved, and then you follow that algorithm. All right? And if there's no instability, then you just get away with the decompression. So this is just to show you an example. One body involvement, normal kyphosis, only posterior involvement, and this patient just had a posterior decompression and has a good outcome. This is another patient, with anterior compression but less than 2 bodies involved, and kyphosis with that, you can see that bony fragment. So this patient had a transpedicular decompression, and then if there is kyphosis with more bodies involved, that requires sort of a more extensive surgery. So for example, something like this, you require to do a anterior procedure too. Okay, this part of this surgical study we had published in the Spine Journal, and the conservative series actually is under review right now. So this is just to show you the outcomes and the problems which we faced more so like in the drug resistant group, and this is just to show you like 5 bodies involved, failure, and this child also had a tuberculosis of the hip involvement also. The hip was, you can see there's a hip flexion deformity. And the review of literature, a lot of work done by Dr. NENE on this, okay, and basically just to show you that some of the literature that's looked at. And the take-home message really is to consider the neurology stability in the cord compression, look at the deformity progression in children, and conservative treatment is actually effective in the majority. You have to monitor them closely during the treatment and even after the treatment. We do the MRI 3 monthly. PET CT and all is not feasible. Like, these patients are poor, they can't afford tests, and more tests and more tests. So you need to keep things in perspective. Surgery is needed in some children, and the surgical algorithm can be based on the levels involved in stability and neurology. And finally, I'd like to acknowledge Dr. NENE, Dr. Ira Shah, Deepika, and Tausif, and all the fellows who helped in this study. Thank you.